Yes, you've read the title correctly. This is the time when Magnus Carlsen completely broke down Hikaru Nakamura and just made him suffer over the board. Now, as we all know, Hikaru against Magnus is probably the most iconic chess rivalry nowadays. However, when you take a look at their records, sure, in faster games it's like a 50-50. It's a pretty fair match. However, in longer classical games, well, it's not really the same. In the 41 classical games they've played, there were 26 draws and believe it or not, 14 wins for Magnus, which means Hikaru only managed to win once. Like, that's crazy. And this game is in such category as it was a classical game played in the 2018 Sinfield Cup. And yeah, let's just get into it and see what happened that made Hikaru Nakamura actually care. Now Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces and he starts the game with knight to f3. Hikaru decides to copycat him, plays knight to f6, and after d4, e6, c4, d5 and knight to c3, we transpose into the very well-known Queen's Gambit decline. Now the game will continue in a very standard way as we go into one of its main ones. Hikaru plays bishop to e7, and now Magnus just really wants to play e3, develop his bishop, put his king to safety and go from there. But if he plays e3, well, this dark square bishop will kinda be locked in, so first he plays bishop f4, just like in the London, so it doesn't get caged in. And yeah, now he'll just push his pawn, develop his bishop, and continue with his plan. Hikaru here castles, and yeah, after e3, Hikaru goes b6, we have bishop to d3, and now another very standard idea in the Queen's Gambit decline. Hikaru plays d takes on c4, because now that Magnus Carlsen has touched his bishop, now you'll have to move it again and sort of waste a move. We have bishop takes on c4. And now Hikaru goes for bishop to a6, because if you've ever played this Queen's Gambit decline with black, you know very well how bad this line square bishop can become, just stuck here behind his pawns, so Hikaru just tries trading it ASAP. Magnus continues with queen to e2, just intensifying the pressure, and indeed we have the trade. Bishop takes on c4, queen takes on c4, and all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure here on c7. So Hikaru addresses this, he goes c5, and now we have some trades. D takes on c5, b takes on c5, and now this pawn is kinda weak here, it doesn't really have adjacent pawns to defend it, so it might become a target for Magnus. Here he just puts his king to safety, he castles, Hikaru continues his development, we have knight to c6, and now all that's left for Magnus to complete his development is to bring his rooks to the open files. We have rook a to c1, also preparing to put pressure on this pawn. Hikaru continues with rook to c8, preparing to defend it, and Magnus here goes for knight to e5, just trying to trade his knights because his knight wasn't really doing anything on f3. Hikaru continues with queen to b6, develops his queen, also hits this weak pawn of Magnus back here on b2, and Magnus goes for a trade. You have knight takes on c6, Hikaru takes with the rook so that the queen keeps pressuring here, and Magnus just defends it. We have b3, Hikaru here just plays h6, preventing bishop to g5, which could be annoying sometimes, so why not take care of it. Magnus finishes his development, brings his other rook, and Hikaru here plays queen to b7. Now, this looks like kind of a weird move, because you can bring your other rook, you can do something productive, why just play a random move with the queen? Well, the thing is that Magnus would eventually play this knight to a4, trying to hit this pawn, and would also just hit the queen, so Hikaru just prophylactically takes her out of b6, and yeah, Carlsen now continues with h3, and after rook f to c8, just overprotecting this pawn here on c5, Carlsen goes for that knight to a4 maneuver I was talking about to really put the pressure here on c5. Now Hikaru here plays knight to d7, which is kind of a funny move because when you take a look, almost all of black's pieces are good defending this pawn, but he's not really wanting to defend this pawn. He's just going to rotate his knight to b6 and go for some trades here. Now, Magnus doesn't really have a lot to do besides focusing on this pawn, so the other really viable plan is what he does. He plays rook to d2 and just tries doubling up here on this file, and perhaps he'll infiltrate and pose some problems for Hikaru. Like I said, Hikaru wanted to play knight b6, so that's what he does. After knight takes on b6, plays rook takes on d6, so perhaps the rook can infiltrate via b4 and start getting activated that way. Now Magnus here plays rook c to d1, really just doubles up on the d file, but another alternative would be for him to play bishop to a5, because this seizes complete control of this diagonal, also opens some lines for the queen, so perhaps he can start an attack on Hikaru's king. because here he doubles up. Sure, he's threatening to infiltrate, but now Hikaru can just play bishop to f6 and he's completely fine. Magnus infiltrates anyway, we have rook to d7, but now queen a6 just asking for a trade. Magnus obviously declines, he plays queen to e4, he's in for a fight after all. And Hikaru now plays this very interesting e5 move, because the pawn can't really be taken, or just rook to e8 and it pins the bishop to the queen, the other rook will come by, and even though Magnus can defend it, it's not really ideal. So in the game, Magnus will have to drop back his bishop, and just admit he has a bad bishop here, right? Well, not really, because here he plays bishop takes on h6 and gives away the bishop completely. Like, that's insane. Because after pawn takes bishop, where's the attack? For example, queen to g4, just king f8, and the king stands completely safe here. So, what was Magnus thinking after g takes on h6? Well, actually, he would also sacrifice the rook. Like, this is just insane. Because now Magnus is threatening mate here on h7, so the rook really has to be taken. But now queen to h7. And even though he carries up a complete rook and bishop, he will just be dead. Because these pieces can't support his king. For example, even if the bishop blocks, the rook just slides in and the king is just dead. So after this queen check, you can try to go back, but they can't rook to d7, and there's always this mate here. So basically, Hikaru would be dead if he took this bishop, because of this amazing rook sacrifice. So in the game, he tried rook to e8, and this is also a very nice move, because if Magnus makes a random move, now the bishop can be taken, because in the same variation, now if the rook takes queen h7, now the bishop can block, because after rook to d7, this rook that's now on e8 can actually block, and yeah, the king is completely safe. Even if you take the rook, king takes, and you take the bishop, the king against the queen will be able to survive. He'll just make his way to his major pieces, and yeah, Hikaru will be up just a queen rook. So this rook to e8 back here is actually threatening to take the bishop. So Magnus can't really afford to make a random move, and here he plays queen to g4, which is a nice move, pins the pawn to the king. The bishop is now no longer hanging. But still, Hikaru is a bit weirded out by this, because he says, okay, you're not really threatening anything, so I'm just gonna take your pawn here on the queen side, don't mind me. And again, Magnus doesn't really have anything. His attack is kinda gone, because everything is well defended here in Black's camp. So here he tries playing e4, which blocks this line from the rook, also opens some squares for the bishop, and Hikaru says don't mind me again, and takes this pawn here on b3. Now Magnus takes his bishop back, he wasn't really doing anything on this h6 square anymore. Also puts some pressure here on c5, because Hikaru is actually up a point of material, so Magnus should try to regain it. Here Hikaru offers a trade, he goes rook to b7, Magnus declines, he plays rook 7 to d6, hits this bishop, because remember the pawn is pinned. Hikaru does something about it, he plays bishop e7, attacks this rook, Magnus plays rook 6 to d5, and if we take a look, he forks these pawns, because this bishop is also involved, right? So Hikaru plays bishop f8, decides to protect this pawn here on e5, and Magnus just recovers this pawn. And after bishop takes on c5, rook takes on c5, we arrive at this position where we have a 4 against 3 on the king side, and Hikaru has this passed pawn here. Objectively, this is a completely drawn position, so Hikaru just tries going for some simplifications and call it a draw. He plays queen to e6, just trying to trade queens, but Magnus declines, he plays queen to e2. Hikaru's continue offering trades, plays rook to d7, but this time Magnus accepts. We have rook takes on d7, queen takes on d7, and okay, even though there's this passed pawn here, the game now will enter a very, maneuvering phase, let's call it that way, because it's move 35 and the game managed to find its way to 100 moves. So yeah, there's not really a lot to talk about. I'll go quickly through the moves. Hikaru puts his rook on a8, protects this pawn. Also, perhaps he's looking to start pushing it, but Magnus keeps the pressure on. Hikaru gives a pity check here. We have queen to c5, and both sides just going with their pieces back and forward. Really, there's not a lot to do, so yeah, they're probably thinking of offering a draw by now, but yeah, Magnus, as you know, is known for squeezing out water out of stone, so it never hurts to try. Now again, pieces always going back and forward, we have a check by Magnus, but there's no danger for each side, but Oh, just wait, because Hikaru voluntarily put his queen on f7, which allows Magnus to go queen to a2, and all of a sudden the queen is pinned, so we'll have some trades and the dynamic of the position will change entirely, because we have a queen trade, and Hikaru now starts activating his king. We have rook back to a6, just blocking everything, and the king continues going in. We have king to g6. Now we have h4 by Magnus. He starts gaining some space here. Hikaru targets his pawn. He plays king to h5, but king to h3, just defending it. Now we have rook to f7, which I'll explain in a bit. And after g4 by Magnus, Hikaru's king is forced backwards, so he plays king to h6. And now this rook f7 can be explained because he wanted to reinforce this pawn here on f6, because there might be this g5 move eventually for Magnus, since this pawn here on f6 is pinned. So this rook to f7 just looking to overprotect it, but as we can see, Magnus doesn't really have anything, and yeah, we're kind of in a stalemate again, not a lot to do. Here he plays king to g3, just really making a waiting move. And the Hikaru here just needs to sit tight. Magnus can't really do anything. I mean, perhaps he will try to bring his king around, but this rook along with this pawn won't really let him in. So Hikaru doesn't really have anything to worry, but maybe he started panicking and played g5. He was worried that Magnus would eventually have g5 himself, so he played g5, which, okay, stops g5 by Magnus, but allows him to play h5, and this is still a drawn position. However, practically the chances for Magnus have increased dramatically, because without this pawn here on g7, there's no longer someone to stop this pawn besides the king. So Magnus has something to work with now. Hikaru plays king to g7, just making a waiting move with his king. From now on, he will really just have to resort to waiting, nothing he can do. And Magnus will try to bring his king. He plays king to f2. We have rook to b7, just waiting. Rook a3, because Magnus wants to bring his king up. However, if he does, just rook b3 and the checks will start raining. So first he plays rook to a3, just shielding the king from checks and trying to escort it up the board. You have king to h6, again just waiting. And after king to e3, something kind of inexplicable happens. Okay, sure, Magnus is threatening to bring his king and start infiltrating. But even if Hikaru was scared of that, there's moves like rook to d7, which completely block the king's access to the d file. This pawn is always protected, even if rook a6, just king to g7, everything is just completely protected by Hikaru. But here, I don't know, Hikaru just started panicking and played a5. Like, what? Sure, it has this idea of the rook leaving this line and Hikaru's rook starting to infiltrate, but I don't think there was any need for this. To be fair, I didn't mention it until now, but Hikaru was having a terrible tournament, so perhaps he was just feeling the pressure and tried simplifying into a position he thought was for sure a draw. However, this just gives Magnus too much to work with, and Magnus being Magnus, it makes water out of stone like I was talking about. Because here he takes this pawn, and sure, Hikaru starts raining checks, he plays rook to b3, but the king just hides here. We have rook f2, rook to b2, and after king to g3, Magnus will just find a way to coordinate his rook to defend his king and march it up the board some way. Now Hikaru has to wait, he plays king to g7, Hikaru gives a check, we have king to g8. Now here he plays rook a1 with a very nice idea in mind. He wants to play rook f1, rook f2, and vacate some squares and try to bring his king up the board again. Now Hikaru has to wait, he always has to wait, he can't do anything, and Magnus goes for this plan. We have rook to a2 by Hikaru, rook f2 by Magnus, he can't really afford the rook trade, so rook to a3. Now rook to d2, preparing to infiltrate, also the king is gonna join the fun. We have rook to a7, just again stopping Magnus from ever entering, but now Magnus's king starts making his way in. We have king to f2, and Hikaru has to resort to waiting again. We have king to f7, king to e2, rook to b7, rook to d3, and he's just escorting the king up, like the king is just gonna make his way in. We have rook to a7, king to d2, king to e6, and okay, so far everything still seems in control for Hikaru. Even though he's down a pawn, I mean, Magnus can't really make progress because this h5 pawn will just be completely controlled by the black king and rook, so it's still kinda tough for Magnus to make progress. But Magnus is still Magnus, so Hikaru really can't sleep on the wheel. So here Magnus continues trying to get in, he plays king to c3, you have king to e7, but now king to c4, and Magnus is kind of overstepping with his king. The rook can't really shield from the checks, so Hikaru just starts raining them down. He plays rook to c7, but the king continues going in. We have king to b5. Hikaru plays rook to c1, just trying to check from below. But Magnus here just plays rook to b3, and look at this amazing rook. Blocks the checks, also protects this very important pawn on f3 that really supports Magnus's entire baseline of pawns. So Magnus's king will really just make his way up the board. But now you ask, like, the king is still completely controlled. What will it matter if Magnus's king makes its way to b8? Like, he'll just stay stranded there doing nothing. But Magnus is Magnus, like I was saying, he makes things happen out of thin air. So let's give him some time to cook. Here, Hikaru continues waiting. We have king to f7, king to b6. Again, he's making his way to b8 for some reason. We have rook to c7, king to b7. After rook to c8, king to b8. What's happening now? We have king to g8, rook to b6. Magnus hits this weak pawn here on f6, so Hikaru just has to defend it. But now rook to b7, king is forced out of its way, and rook to c7, and this move looks weird because Hikaru gives a check, we have rook to b1, and if Magnus doesn't block, the rook is going to make his way to b3 and start collecting. But that's exactly Magnus's idea. He plays king to c8, and now the king is shielded by the rook. He's going to start making its way in and will start collecting pawns of his own. Here Hikaru plays rook to b3, indeed going after the f3 pawn, but like I said, the king now just finds its way in. He plays king to d7 and just sacrifices his pawn here on f3 because he's going to get the king in return. Hikaru has to take, he plays rook takes on f3, but now king to a6, and Hikaru is just in trouble. He plays rook to f4, looking to collect some more pawns, but he probably missed this combination. Magnus goes for h6, and he's just going to push his passed pawn. For example, if Hikaru takes any one of these pawns, just h7, king has to go to h8 to protect the promotion square, but now king to f5, and the king gains a tempo on the rook. The king will find its way to g6, and yeah, this rook to c8 is just unstoppable. This will be straight up mate, right? So Hikaru is kind of in trouble now. And after h6, he didn't collect any pawn. Instead, he played king to h8, anticipating this check. Magnus plays rook to b7, kinda just waiting a move to see what Hikaru will do. He plays king to g8, just praying for a repetition at this point, but it's not going to happen. Magnus spots the combination, and it's all over from now. He plays rook to g7, checking the black king. He has to go to h8, just stopping perhaps this pawn from promoting. But now king to f7, and this is just an evil move. He wants to play king to g6, bring his rook out, and just straight up mate Hikaru. Hikaru has to take this pawn because he wants to find his way back to the back rank to help with the defense. Magnus continues with this plan. He plays king to g6. We have rook a4 going for this idea, but here Hikaru probably missed this move. We have rook to h7 by Magnus, and it was in this position that Hikaru Nakamura broke down. He broke down and he spent like 5 or 6 minutes just like this. He started carrying. Like after all this effort, he defended so well, he played such a very nice game, and in the end, to lose like this, it must have hit him, very badly, especially since he was already having such a terrible tournament. But yeah, the problem after rook to h7 is that the king is forced to g8, but now, for example, rook e7, threatening mate, rook has to protect, but now, for example, king takes on f6, Magnus will just start taking these pawns, and yeah, with these pawns rolling, there's no way Hikaru will survive this. So it was in this position after rook to h7 that Hikaru, yeah, almost started crying. But that was it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video where, it was unfortunate, but sometimes this kind of things happen to even this kind of players just to show it happens to everyone. Hope you found this interesting. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you watched this far, please consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, catch you in the next one. Bye.